Tonight, with the government still open for business, the Speakership on the line after last weekend's narrow shutdown escape.
I am relentless, and I will continue to pursue this objective.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy faces a leadership challenge.
Bring it on.
And persecution in Europe over expressions of faith.
It falls to you and I to make sure we're maintaining our vigilance to preserve these freedoms.
Concerns over threats to religious liberty crossing the Atlantic. Plus, America's oldest living former president turns 99.
If you want to go for 100, I'm here with you.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Could avoiding the shutdown and keeping the government funded cost the House Speaker his job? Thanks for joining us for Faith Nation from the CBN studio in the nation's capital. I'm John Jessup. Well, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is now facing a possible ouster vote from his job, a move from fellow Republicans angry that he turned to Democrats for help with a last-minute down-to-the-wire deal to avoid a partial government shutdown. CBN's Hillary Powell joins us now with more on the short-term deal. Hillary, how long does this deal actually last?
It's a good question, John, and there's still more work to do. The federal funding in place keeps federal agencies open for 45 days. And to achieve this, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy had to cut back on some of his requests for some deep spending cuts on the federal level. He also had to reach across the aisle to work and rely on Democratic votes to get this bipartisan legislation through to the Senate. And for his efforts, his party is now questioning his leadership.
There will be no government shutdown. Democrats have said from the start that the only solution for avoiding a shutdown is bipartisanship. And we're glad that Speaker McCarthy has finally heeded our message.
The House and Senate passed a bipartisan stopgap spending measure just hours before the midnight deadline on Saturday.
The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
The deal includes $16 billion in disaster relief requested by the White House, but no new aid for Ukraine. Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he put his leadership role on the line to announce the proposal following weeks of infighting within his own party.
But what I am asking, Republicans and Democrats alike, put your partisanship away. Focus on the American public. If somebody wants to remove, because I want to be the adult in the room, go ahead and try. But I think this country is too important.
Florida Republican Representative Matt Gaetz says he plans to force a vote on whether to oust Speaker Kevin McCarthy. On the House floor Monday, Gaetz called out McCarthy, questioning a possible Ukraine funding side deal made outside the stopgap bill.
What commitments were made to President Biden? Members of the Republican Party might vote differently on a motion to vacate if they heard what the Speaker had to share with us about his secret side deal with Joe Biden on Ukraine.
The fight underlines fractures in the Republican conference. The White House press secretary says Ukraine still has bipartisan support, but says they'll remain outside of the fight she calls chaos.
The motion to vacate has nothing to do with us. That is absolutely nothing to do with us. That is something for House Republicans to figure out, and we're going to let the leadership figure that piece out.
Okay, amid all of this drama, it's important to note that this is still temporary federal funding, so we may have to revisit this issue shortly before Thanksgiving. As far as those threats to House Speaker McCarthy about his leadership, it would only take about a handful of people to vote him out. But as of now, he still holds broad support around Republicans in his conference. John?
Act 2 in the coming month. Thank you so much, Hillary. Well, one Republican who supported a shutdown is former President Donald Trump. He said his party could use a budget deal to defund what he calls political prosecutions against him. But even a shutdown wouldn't have kept the GOP frontrunner out of court today as the trial for New York's civil fraud case against Trump and his company kicked off in Manhattan. The $250 million lawsuit brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James claims the Trump Organization and its leaders inflated the value of the company's real estate holdings to get better business deals.
No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, No one is above the law. The law is both powerful and fragile. And today in court, we will prove our case.
The former president, on his way in and out of court today, fired back at all the allegations of wrongdoing.
It's a scam, it's a sham. There was no crime.
Well, here now for more is Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, let's just start right there. Since his first criminal indictment, the former president's poll numbers have actually gone up. Will this civil trial, in your eyes and your estimation, do anything to damage Trump's 2024 bid?
No. As a matter of fact, I'm just waiting for the poll numbers to increase. You know, all along, the whole idea of the anti-Trump contingent out there, and that includes Republicans and Democrats, was, well, let's just wait till he's indicted. Then he's going to get, it'll be over for Trump. Well, no. Another indictment, no. Another, no. 4 indictments and this civil trial regarding fraud. None of it matters, John. None of it matters. And I know a lot of people are scratching their head, but here's the truth. What's happening specifically in this case, in the fraud case, look, there were no victims that came forward and said that there was a problem. All loans were repaid. We have a judge today, some of the video coming out of the courtroom showing the judge smiling and laughing. Look, I think kind of like regular people that don't pay attention to politics, so I consider myself not a regular person because I do pay attention to politics. I think people understand, like, this is just ridiculous. And Trump is setting himself up as a victim of the system, and it is working from a poll standpoint for sure.
Oh, well, turning now to Capitol Hill, the big question on the minds of many, does Kevin McCarthy survive? Your thoughts about averting the shutdown, and will it cost him the speakership?
I don't think it's going to cost him the speakership. I think he will survive. Look, here's the truth of the matter. McCarthy, to survive, is going to need Democrat help. Let's just be clear as what the number is. He's going to need 218, whether it be Republicans or Democrats. He's going to need 218 votes to keep him in the speakership. He probably has around 200 or so, roughly, Republicans. So he's going to need, what, 18 to 20 or so Democrats to support him there. I suspect he'll get that if it even gets that far. And if for some reason it doesn't, and Matt Gaetz is somehow successful in all of this, I don't see that happening. But if he is, let's remember, he's going to need pretty much all, Gaetz is going to need pretty much all the Democrats to vote with Gaetz and about maybe 15, 20 or so Republicans. So either way, Democrats are just loving every minute of this. The Democrats are in total control of what happens to Speaker McCarthy.
David, I want to ask you and press in a little bit further here. Is this better the enemy you know versus the enemy you don't know? If Democrats don't support Speaker McCarthy, then they might get even a tougher firebrand, if you will. Do you think they might exert the leverage that they have to extract some concessions from Speaker McCarthy if he's able to continue?
Well, that's a great question. And we're about to find out, John, in this next week. So we just don't know at this point. But yeah, that would be the plan, right? If you're a Democrat, you're Hakeem Jeffries, you're sitting there going, okay, you want my votes to keep you as speaker? What are you going to give me? And the same thing with Gaetz, though Gaetz doesn't have much to offer. But McCarthy does, so we'll see.
David, just about 30 seconds left. We know the Supreme Court kicks off its new term today. In a ProPublica interview published yesterday, President Biden said the Constitution does not prevent Congress from enacting a code of ethics for Supreme Court justices. As we head into the presidential election year, how do you think the candidates will use the Supreme Court to win voters?
Well, I think it'll be important, but with Roe v. Wade decided, and of course there's a lot of other issues that need to still be decided, I don't think it's going to be as prevalent as in past years. Having said that, regarding the ethics portion of this, I think the Senate is already about to be very soon to pass some sort of code of ethics for the Supreme Court justices. So I think you're going to see that move forward. And to that extent, it'll be in the news. But I'm not quite sure it's on the top of voters' minds, though it is definitely an issue that Democrats want to highlight.
All right, David, we're going to have to leave it there. CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. Thanks so much, David.
Thanks, John.
Coming up, quoting the Bible considered a crime? Where attacks on religious freedom are taking place and why some say America might be next. Welcome back. Quoting scripture, sharing a story about coming out of a sinful lifestyle, even protesting progressive culture with silent prayers. In Europe, some Christians are facing jail for expressing their faith. And as CBN's Billy Hallowell explains, some are expressing concern similar persecution could soon cross the Atlantic.
Religious liberty battles spreading across Europe and beyond are sparking fears about if and when these same struggles could come to America. In Finland, a member of parliament is one of the more prominent people on trial for her religious views.
It was 4 years ago, in June 2019, when I posted a Twitter post and also to Facebook. And it was about the Pride event that was going on, and that the main church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church, decided to support it officially. And it was a shock to me.
In questioning the church's support, Päivi Räsänen shared a verse from the book of Romans about same-sex relationships and quickly found herself in a legal battle.
Some citizen made a criminal complaint about this Twitter update, and then police started to investigate the case. And after it came into public, then there became more and more criminal complaints about one radio program, and then there was an old pamphlet I had written already 2004 about marital and sexual issues.
While unanimously acquitted of charges last year, prosecutors appealed Räsänen's case, leading to a second trial.
The maximum punishment is 2 years jail or fine. But of course, in Finland, we have in our constitution, we have the freedom of speech and freedom of religion.
Unfortunately, this struggle goes beyond Finland. On the Mediterranean island of Malta, Matthew Gresh, an ex-LGBT activist, faces potential prison time after sharing his testimony of leaving a gay lifestyle to follow Christ.
Last year, I was invited to share my story on a program and answer questions about so-called conversion practices. And I mentioned an organization as well that supports men and women who leave LGBT, and an organization that promotes biblical sexuality.
Within days, numerous people reported to police that Gresh violated Chapter 567 of Maltese law, which bans advertising conversion therapy.
I had to go to the police, and I exercised my right to be silent, and the police pressed charges against me.
Gresh says the potential ramifications could be sweeping.
If I'm found guilty, I could spend 5 months in jail, or I could pay a fine of up to 5,000 euros in Malta just for really exercising my freedom to be a Christian and to support others who want to move away from unwanted LGBT identities or desires, etc.
And Andrea Williams with Christian Concern points out how in the UK, abortion clinic buffer zones basically prevent people from assembling, counseling, and even silently praying outside those facilities.
And I think it's very hard for nations in the West, for nations such as America and Great Britain, to imagine really that we've reached this far, apart from we have. So I think that those that are watching this will think, really, has Great Britain created a space where you are unable to speak quietly, unable even to pray, unable even to walk alongside a woman to explain another way?
Consider what happened to UK Army veteran Adam Smith Connor. Last November, officers began questioning him for silently praying outside of a clinic for his own son who had been aborted.
So they informed me that they considered that my praying for my deceased son was a breach of the PSPO, that it was an act of disapproval of abortion, although I wasn't manifesting that prayer in any way. And if I hadn't told them, they would have had no way of knowing what I was praying about. It was a silent prayer in my mind.
Williams says if Americans don't pay attention, these laws could make their way across the Atlantic.
I would like to warn those of you in America to ensure that these initially civil measures that get placed in and around certain buildings, so in and around abortion clinics, then take on a quasi-criminal force. There's also the political pressure that's applied around them.
These examples beg the question, could the criminalization of Christianity come to the U.S.? Jeremy Dice, senior counsel of First Liberty, says there's no easy answer.
I really hope that that risk is low, but I can't say that it is zero because there's always forces that want to restrict our religious liberty for reasons I don't quite understand.
Dice says the litany of cases prove the fight for religious liberty battles is ongoing and often takes years.
The reality is that people of faith are facing a constant barrage of religious attacks, questions about their faith and whether they're welcomed in the workplace or the public square.
In the end, Dice says stopping the chaos seen in Malta, the UK, and other nations from reaching the U.S. depends on Americans' commitment to freedom.
I'm grateful that we have a First Amendment. We have got other laws in place that protect our religious freedom, but it falls to you and I to make sure we're maintaining our vigilance to preserve these freedoms going forward for our next generations.
And Americans don't need law degrees to play a role in protecting these freedoms. Prayer, staying informed, and exercising the right to vote are all powerful tools that don't cost anything but time. Billy Hollowell, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Billy. Well, two important legislative measures fighting for religious freedom are being commemorated this week on Capitol Hill. On Tuesday, the Religious Freedom Institute will host an event marking the 30th anniversary of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and the 25th anniversary of the International Religious Freedom Act. Among the goals of the Capitol commemoration is exploring the historic and cultural impacts of these measures and looking at the role the United States will play in preserving international religious freedom in the future. Let's bring in Nathaniel Hurd, North America Director and Senior Fellow for Public Policy at the Religious Freedom Institute. First off, can you tell us about tomorrow's event and the historical significance of the measures taken to protect religious freedom?
Absolutely, and it's good to be with you. We thought it was good with the 30th anniversary of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and the 25th anniversary of the International Religious Freedom Act to just take stock of where we are in the world and here in the United States. We're seeing religious freedom under threat, under siege in both places. And we wanted to remind people of why these two critical pieces of legislation have been essential to defending religious freedom here in the United States and around the world.
Well, we just watched Billy's report just a moment ago talking about the threats to religious freedom in Europe. Do you agree with Jeremy Dice from First Liberty, who said the chances are low for that kind of persecution to happen here in the United States? What's your thoughts?
We're not there yet, but I think it's plausible if we're not vigilant. Really, what we have happening in the United States is that, on the one hand, you have proponents of different ideologies who are making false claims about what it means to be human, about life and marriage and family and human sexuality and males and females. And on the other hand, you have religious people and their organizations, their congregations, their ministries, who are defending what it means to be human, who really are the last guardians of reality. And because of that, they're being targeted for litigation, for public smear campaigns. The government is going after them. And legislation like the Equality Act continues to rear its head. And you also see criminal attacks on pregnancy centers and Catholic churches and others. So we're not where Finland is quite yet, but we will head in that direction if the rest of us aren't vigilant and don't push back.
Nathaniel, on the macro level, if we expand globally, what countries would you point to as the worst offenders of religious freedom?
Well, certainly China, North Korea. The problem is with the government. There are a few places on the planet that are more repressive. Certainly in China, I mean, you have Christians who are regularly being persecuted. You have Uyghur Muslims who have been herded into concentration camps. Similar situation in North Korea. Nigeria is one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a Christian. But then also in Europe, I mean, as your previous piece noted, we're seeing the kind of threats that have begun to emerge in the United States also popping up in Europe as well.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Nathaniel Hurd, the North America Director and Senior Fellow for Public Policy at the Religious Freedom Institute. We wish you all well as you celebrate the 30th and 25th anniversaries on Capitol Hill tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time and for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, after years of pause, the cost of college comes back. What to expect now that the moratorium on student loan payments is over. Next on Faith Nation. Welcome back. Tens of millions of Americans are recalculating their budgets to once again include paying off their student debt. Payments resumed this week after a 3-year break due to the pandemic. More than 45 million people owe about $1.7 trillion in student loans. The Biden administration tried to cancel about $20 billion of the debt, but the Supreme Court ruled against that program. Well, California Governor Gavin Newsom has picked a replacement to fill the seat of the late United States Senator Dianne Feinstein. LaFonza Butler will serve in the role until at least the 2024 election. Butler is currently the president of Emily's List, a political action committee with the goal of electing Democratic pro-choice women. Announcing his pick on social media, Governor Gavin Newsom noted Butler will make history, becoming the first black lesbian to openly serve in the United States Senate. We'll be back after the break. Finally tonight, Jimmy Carter making history as the longest living president of the United States. The nation's 39th commander-in-chief celebrating 99 years of life. To mark the occasion Sunday, celebrations took place across Carter's home state of Georgia and at the White House. The peanut farmer president entered hospice care back in February. He spent his birthday at home with his wife and family. Carter served one term as president from 1977 to 1981. And he dedicated his post-Oval Office life to humanitarian work and his faith, teaching Sunday school at his home church in Plains, Georgia, Maranatha Baptist, well into his 90s. That is quite an accomplishment. Happy birthday to him and good night. Thanks for joining us.